Welcome to part 2 of a 3-part series about the Bad Bank full stack application that I developed for the MIT X-Pro program. This is about database and APIs. The database and APIs is diagrammed here, and you can see that there's a backend server. It's an Express server with API routes, and my database, which is MongoDB, and what I utilized was the online version, which is MongoDB Atlas, as well as my desktop version, which is MongoDB via Compass. This app's data is stored in MongoDB Atlas, a non-SQL database. The database contains the data in a document format rather than in rows and columns that you would see in a relational database. I also have access to this database via my desktop app, Compass. The persistent data contained within is found within the following fields: name, email address, password, balance, and a unique record identifier, in this case called an object ID. I access the data via Mongo Atlas and via Compass using a MongoDB assigned URI, aka a URL. Scroll into the database and then get actual data as you click into the users. So you have to go to the database, then the project, my project within the database, and then the users. And what you need to do in order to get the most accurate and current data is click on the refresh button, which is located next to my pointer. The primary purpose of the DAL, data access layer file, is to act as a buffer between your APIs and your database. Initially, when we created this file in class, it was set to have a local instance of the database on port 27017. However, I figured this was not practical for actual deployment, so I connected my app via the DAL file and the env file to Atlas, the online version of MongoDB. So the database essentially became another API endpoint. The env environment file should be encrypted. It's not, because this is an academic put-through. Real production, it would be encrypted because your credentials and other environmental details are contained within. You see the screenshot of my code to the right, and you will notice the persistent data on line 25. Also, the user's parameter matches up with the screenshot, the previous screenshot that you saw of the Compass collection. Obstacles I ran into creating the database connection. So one obstacle that I ran into was creating the connection string that could not contain special characters. So it says that you can within the Atlas documentation, but when you actually go to employ it, because your connection string is a URI/URL, when you try to use percentage encoding, which is noted on the lower right-hand screenshot, it doesn't work and it doesn't translate into the browsers correctly. It took me about 2 days to figure this out. I'm laughing now, but it wasn't funny at the time. So now we're going to talk about my APIs in the app. First of all, what is an API? It stands for Application Programming Interface. I think of APIs as internal and external. In essence, it's the different modules of an application that talk to one another, and they'll point where they get and exchange the data. So the endpoint is where the API goes to get the data. This can be internal to the application or an external website from which the data is gotten or posted. So in the case of this DAL file, it helps to intersect with MongoDB Atlas URI/URL. That URI or URL is actually the external endpoint for the API, which is created and directed through the DAL file. Are the APIs RESTful? Returns all the data with the .getter of a GraphQL type. candidly, there are only like 5 pieces of persistent data contained within this entire application. It's the username, email, password, balance, and unique object ID. So that's certainly not necessary under these circumstances. Had it been more complex, a GraphQL and probably a different type of database would be employed. In this bad bank app, the index file is filled with APIs. The keywords app post and app get are the telling point about the APIs. So app, it creates an instance of the application in the Express server. .post, .get. These are methods for posting, creating new, or getting existing data from various endpoints. And the endpoints are often expressed as relative or absolute paths to a file where they be the internal or external respectively. Thank you so much for watching the second of a 3-part series regarding bad bank full stack application.